Hi, this is John Tierney from the Historic Graves Project, and this autumn we got funding from the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage through the Community Monument Fund. We were asked by the Lea Castle Conservation Project in County Laois to get involved and help them explore their local graveyard, Old Lea Graveyard, up outside Portarlington in County Laois. And that group applied through Catherine Casey's office in Laois County Council, the Heritage Office there, for funding through the Community Monument Fund. We originally intended to run a standard 2-day training survey inside in the graveyard, training the local community how to record their headstones, how to do care and conservation of the graveyard. But 3 odd weeks ago, level 5 restrictions from coronavirus kicked in, so we had to come up with an alternate strategy. So we couldn't get people into the graveyard, we couldn't get people mixing, it was too risky, and it didn't abide by the rules of level 5. So instead what happened was we were given an exemption in terms of having a field archaeologist in the field outside their own 5k. So we went up to the graveyard and we surveyed it ourselves, communicating with the local group. In fact, the first thing we did before doing the survey was the Western Aerial Surveys went in and did a flyover for us and produced a measured drone survey and some video footage of the locality as well. They sent us on a very high resolution image of the graveyard, and we used that as our ground map really for surveying the graveyard. And we had to get the site surveyed and up online quite quickly, and that was all pretty much online by last Friday week, and the data entry was finished by the Monday, and the work is now online on Historic Graves, and I'm going to show how to work with the online data set now while chatting with Celie and Colum and David from the local group, and then after that I'll do some more demonstration in terms of how to use the website. To set the graveyard survey in context, where is Old Lea Graveyard? People up in the Portarlington area will probably know where it is. I doubt a lot of people have visited there. What I do when I'm going into my maps, usually I'll go into archaeology.ie, I'll go into the Historic Environment Viewer. That loads up maps, the Ordnance Survey maps of Ireland. You enter an address. I think the townland is Lochmans, Glebe. Any sign of that? There, yeah. Okay. So Lochmans, Glebe. Click on that, and that then zooms you into that locality. And sure enough, there is the graveyard. So if I zoom way out, where are we? Slow to load now. Okay, there's Portlaoise, quite close to the Kildare border. Newbridge quite close then as well, and it's closest to Portarlington. The River Barrow is flowing to the north of the site. Lea Castle is over here to the west of the site, and the community group that we were working with first got involved following storm damage to that castle. If we go to the base map gallery, and if you switch into digital globe, it gives you nice imagery for what the place looks like nowadays. Parked out here near the road, and you walk in this avenue up to the graveyard, approaching it from the west. If we look at 25-inch map, you can see that that laneway is there, and that it ran down the side of the graveyard, and that the Mount Mellick branch of the Grand Canal, is it? The Grand Canal is just to the south of that, and I presume that cut off the main access into the graveyard. Yeah. The burials there are the mid-19th century, so it strikes me that these families, they no longer have people visiting them, no longer visiting the grave. We tend to see a 75-year cut-off for that, for visits to a graveyard, 3 generations or thereabouts. And the reason this is a woodland today is that families have stopped visiting, and that has resulted in this very interesting environment. So when you zoom in on archaeology.ie, you click on the red dot, and that tells you what that red dot is. It's a church, Lochman's Glebe, low-lying area, little evidence of a church except for a featureless wall fragment. Wall foundations. The churchyard at Old Lea lies southeast of the 13th century castle. There's another red dot there. What's that for? That's for the graveyard. So the church, the ruined church, which I could only see one part of it when I was there, and the graveyard are both registered together, but also have separate register numbers. And at the graveyard, a featureless fragment in the west side of the graveyard, wall foundations, no obvious pattern, square-shaped graveyard enclosed by a stone wall. Very nice stone wall, some of which is being damaged by trees, so that's going to be looked at as a conservation issue.
How I find the site normally, if I'm going looking for, if I've done a survey and the quickest way to find it is just go to Google and enter in historicgraves.com and then the name of the graveyard. And once that goes into Google, then that's usually the quickest way to find them. And then you click on the graveyard and that loads and the graveyard page then emerges. So this is the graveyard page on the Historic Graves website. There's an introductory photograph, there's a descriptive paragraph, and then that's my sketch plan of the location of the mortuary monuments from the field on my iPad. And then there's what we call a contact sheet. What the contact sheet is a little thumbnail photograph of each survey photograph. So there you can see each headstone, gravestone is presented with its number or its code underneath it. So there's 01, 02, 03. So they're all there. Usually what we do is we print that out, Celia, and that goes into a lever arch folder as well as the map. So that's on that front page, contact sheet we call it. And then there's also, this is the current version of the map, and that's the numbered monuments. This is based on the graphic drawing we were talking about earlier. I pulled that drone survey into this drawing package, and I've stuck those numbers in the location of where those gravestones are. So that's the primary use for me as part of the survey, but the actual drone measured survey goes out into the adjacent field as well in each of those cases, so you can see a bigger area. And then each headstone is represented with a photograph, a monument number, and then as part of this project for the Community Monument Fund, we've entered in at least 2 names, if we could, from most of those headstones. If you click on the grave title, which is the graveyard or the gravestone code, it brings you into the gravestone itself. I think I'm zoomed out, am I? Yeah. So that's it at 100%. So the photograph comes up, you move your mouse over the photograph and it zooms in then on the right, showing the gravestone on the ground. And if you squint your eyes, then you can kind of see here lieth ye body of, and there below in the inscription, we've typed out the inscription there that's on that particular headstone. Now, for me, what's interesting about this is that we call that a recumbent slab or a ledger stone. That's quite early for a recumbent slab to be, 1770s. Let's say that went up in the 1780s. So that, and we've noticed that about Laois before. Laois has a lot of early flat slabs like that. And there you can see it's William Murray, spelt E-Y, and then below the son is spelt M-U-R-R-Y. So spellings didn't matter as much in the past. Under memorial type, we've recorded the type it is, ledger slab, and so on. And then we've added in person records there for William, his name and his date, and then the son, we've no then Charles. And then under notes, we have a condition survey done, sound and in situ, adjacent to Coppice Sycamore, but no damage caused. So we've done those notes for every one of the headstones in the graveyard, which isn't the norm. Usually with the community surveys, we spend more time reading and learning than we actually, get to do some of the conservation studies. And then the next image we have here on the screen is what we call it's like a map, a frequency map for the surnames in the graveyard. The larger the surname is there, then the more often we encountered it carved in the stone. Okay, so but you can see Kelly, Walpole, Wall, Warren, Harrison, MacDonald, Lawler, another good Laois name. There's an Anketel, yeah, Harrison's. Chapman was a big name. They have one of the posher grave enclosures inside in the graveyard. And then we also have your Huguenot heritage. There's the Champs or the Champs. Cobb, I'm told, might also have some links with the Huguenot side. There's a Blanc in there as well. And then the Old Irish, I'm presuming the Kellys and the Dunns are your primary Old Irish families. How does that sound? Okay, and then the Dunns are particularly interesting because they're right down in the south part of the graveyard. They have Catholic iconography on them, and I'm wondering which branch of the Dunns are they? Do you know where they might be from in the parish? We'll come to that later, but so that's how it looks. That bunch of names anyway, and that's derived from the spreadsheet that I mentioned, Celia. This is the spreadsheet here that we were looking at earlier. So that's downloaded from the website now, and I'll show you how to download that. So the headstones are presented in batches of 25. There's the first 25. If I jump to page 4, that's the last 25. It finished on 82. So the leaves, the last headstone I found, in fact, it was very overgrown. If I click on it here now, like that's what it looked like at when I found it. It was just a bush or a tree. Whereas now, by the time I'd finished reading it, it's now revealed as such. I might give some context on the methodology I used for doing the survey. Where's my sheets? Oh yeah. How we do the survey is the same in every graveyard we worked on, and we're in about graveyard number 700 now. We stick a number on every headstone using masking tape and a marker. So we write, we just write number 1 on the headstone. We peel off the masking tape, and then we stick that on the side of the headstone, usually on the shoulder of every headstone. And so we go along left to right. We usually start in the southwest corner, and we stick a number on every single headstone. That usually takes an hour and a half, couple of hours maybe. And so after the first 2 hours, we've everything numbered, and now we know where everything, what we've got to record. And then when we have all the numbers on, we then go around with this lad. It's a small little camera. There's a GPS chip in the top of it, and we take one photograph of every headstone using this camera. At a rate of about 30 seconds per photograph. And all we do is we stand perpendicular to the headstone. We're usually 3 feet or 4 feet from the face of the stone, and then with our elbows against our sides, we take a single photograph of the headstone, filling the frame and centering the image. So at a rate of one photograph every 30 seconds, usually we have the photographs done in about an hour and a half. So the first day in Old Lea, I had all the numbers done and all the photographs done that morning. The main problem we had there is also one of the most interesting things about the graveyards is how overgrown it is. It is a fabulous little wilderness almost, which was a problem for us as surveyors, but I think it's actually probably it's going to make it one of the more attractive graveyards in the country from your perspective. Just to be blunt about it, I think it's in a secondary woodland condition, and I think it needs to be preserved like that. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, we need to cut down all the trees," and in this case, I think the learnings that we'll get from looking after the biodiversity of this graveyard are far higher than we would get from actually cleaning it out. I think it's a very important graveyard. Um, Yeah, it's complete. It's not what I normally think or feel. But in this case, it's a very unique kind of secondary woodland habitat in a graveyard. The only places I've seen similar circumstances are usually in large urban graveyards in the UK, where they've let since the 60s they made a decision to manage by abandonment really, and they've got these really interesting habitats. The two I have in mind are in Abney. I think it's Abney Park in London, and Tower Hamlets, I think, in London as well. Some parts of which are really densely overgrown, and this is the closest thing I've seen to that in Ireland, really. So it's a very interesting biodiversity case study, and I'm hoping that we can do something on that basis. I think what we need to do is we need to actually go through and number each tree and decide what's the bare minimum we need to do to actually conserve the built heritage in a way. Now, I've enumerated all of the gravestones that are under strong pressure from trees. Some have been knocked over, they're falling apart because of it. So I now know where all of those are. But I haven't, as part of the project, I haven't actually worked out, if there's 20 of them threatened, do we have to work on all 20, or will only 2 or 3 do? There's actually, that's some work we should do in the field ourselves together. Just meet there and actually walk around and decide, is it absolutely necessary or isn't it? Because in a way, part of the challenge is how to maintain its present character, which I think is quite rare.
If you're new to the website, this is what it looks like when you get there. You arrive on the front page. And if you're going to be working on typing up data from a headstone or from a graveyard survey, you need to create a new account, which is up here in the top right hand corner. You click on create new account, you use a username and an email address, and then you click I'm not a robot and you create new account. In my case, because I'm already logged in, I go back to the front page and I log in. Now, like I say, when you're logged in, the edit button appears on the headstone. So let's jump into a particular headstone. We'll have a look. Page 2, you click there, they're presented in batches of 25. We go to page 2. Disney headstone that I see there. Oh yeah, these are the Mansoras. So there's a flat slab on the ground. It was completely overgrown with moss and with leaves, and we cleaned part of it off, and in memory of Colonel John Craven Mansora, 6th Royal Regiment, 1881. Now, what I loved about this particular stone is that in another survey recently in Castletownroche in County Cork, we found this family as well, their main group of burials. So a lot of this project is about creating links between places and links between groups, and that's why I like finding memorials like this. So you can actually, when you're logged in, you click on the edit button, and that allows you then to go in, and let's say in this case there's 10 more lines to be read. Let's say we had those extra 10 lines, we would just type them in here inside in this inscription box. If we added in extra people, we go down to the people commemorated database here, and down at the bottom there you can add another person. And when you add another person, you click on the green button, and then you put in their name, their first name, their surname, the dates of death, their address if it's on the headstone. We can record relationship with first person, but we tend to do less of that nowadays. It gets quite complex. If you have notes relating to that particular family or that particular person, we put it into the notes box here. The kind of notes that we record are, if we have links to the person, if they're in the 1901 or the 1911 census, then we usually throw the link in here. If we found them in a register, baptismal register or whatever, we put in the link here as well. 2 websites we use for that are Census Archives and Irish Genealogy. They're the one we spend half our time inside in those. When you've made changes, you click on save, and then your new changes are saved, and it happens live on the internet. So if somebody logs in from Melbourne in Australia and they're looking at this record, when you're editing it, they'll see the changes immediately. What that means is we don't aim to be perfect, we just aim to be good, and we aim to actually improve all along. So if we make a mistake, we just correct the mistake in public. Rather than actually waiting to be perfect and then publishing everything that way we'd actually get nothing done. So there you can see now, in terms of using, if I want to jump to monument number 81, I just go up to the address bar at the top and I change 0041 to 0081, and this is monument 81. It's Lord have mercy on the soul of Thomas Dunn, who departed this life April 7th, 1808. So the notes at the bottom: we took in the field sinuous topped headstone, sound and in situ leaning, high quality limestone and shallow carving. What's carved is Gloria in Excelsis Deo. Only 2 of the headstones in the graveyard have that carved on it. To my mind, very Catholic iconography, and border ornamented with lozenge shape IHS with cross attached in full sunburst, and 2 ciboria. The ciboriums are like chalices. They're used in the sacrament. So if you want, then when you're logged in, you can go to the, if I'm in here in number 81, I can go back to number 80 by going to the graves page or on the side and click on that. Number 80 in this case is also a Dunn headstone, Francis Dunn, rest in peace, 1767, age 72. That means this Francis Dunn was born in the late 1600s. So very interesting ability to actually study this period in Irish history when major shifts in landholding occurred. One political base lost power to another political base. The ascendancy from the 1680s at least onwards began to got a good grip on the land, taking it from the previous higher status families. And what I'd like to do as part of this project with the local group is research who this Francis Dunn was and who the other Dunns are, where they lived in the parish, where they farmed, how much land they had, Catholic, Protestant. So it would be nice to actually do that kind of research with the community group. To wrap up in terms of what we're doing, I think what we've learned over the years is that archaeology and the heritage of historic graveyards is very much tied in with climate change and biodiversity, because in Ireland anyway, a lot of farming has gone to an industrial scale. Graveyards very often are oases of biodiversity within a farming landscape, and studying graveyards like Old Lea, where there's a very rich secondary woodland habitat after forming, maybe 50, 60 years old, without having major felling or cutting taking place. It's a fascinating opportunity to study a semi-wilderness in a graveyard, really. And when you compare it to the land that's around it, which is quite intensely farmed, just like you get all over Ireland, it's a great opportunity. So we'd like with the community group to go back maybe in the new year and walk around the graveyard and identify what the conservation challenges are. Of the 80 odd headstones, I don't know, maybe half of them are threatened by pressure from coppice, sycamore and lime trees pushing against them and knocking them over. Some of them are knocked over already. Maybe that's a done deal. 1 or 2 of them are about to go quite soon. Maybe we could actually protect those, but the rest of it, rather than actually clearing the whole lot out, like I said earlier, I think there's a great opportunity to learn in terms of biodiversity and historic graveyards and historic landscapes here. So I think it'd be a very interesting part of the project. So that's what we want to look at in the new year, and then also with the local group, once we're outside of level 5 restrictions, work out who these different families were, why they buried in Old Lea, why they kept burying in Old Lea even though a new graveyard had opened up for the Church of Ireland community in Rathmiles in the early 1800s, but they kept coming back here to bury their people. Very interesting project. So finally, thanks to the Lee Castle group for their help in getting this on the road. Thanks to Catherine Casey from the County Council, from Laois County Council, who's been dealing with graveyards in County Laois for a long time and has an awful lot of experience in these kind of community projects. And I think what we're hoping to learn from Catherine in the new year is how to balance the biodiversity of this graveyard and how to enhance, how to learn more from it. And then also the Department of Housing and Junior Minister Malcolm Noonan, fantastic getting the resources put in place for these kind of surveys right at the end of what's been a very challenging year.